right, so welcome. Today we're gonna have a lot of fun and also gonna learn about how InnerSource relates to industry that has regulations and like FinTech. So we'll start with a little bit of introduction. Obviously, we're gonna have some fun here. If you haven't met Brittany yet, you can tell that she's someone who likes to have a lot of fun. And I find I have a lot more fun when I'm with her. And that's gonna be all of us here today. Thank you.
So.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll talk a little bit about when in software industry, the impact if you're in an industry that has regulations and controls that need to be met. And then we'll go into a little bit about InnerSource and how that relates and how InnerSource practices are really a fantastic match for regulated industry. And we'll focus on FinTech in this one. We'll bring this in, not just theoretical, but real world use cases. Brittany's the expert in this area. And then have some time at the end for Q&A, all right? So we're gonna go on this adventure together. If you didn't catch it, this whole talk is related to the theme of the Jaws movie from the 1970s.
Yes.
So let's go. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Fun fact, 50th anniversary happened last Saturday. Boom. So who are we? Right? So as I already mentioned, we gave us our name. So Brittany Istenes, I'm an open source strategist. I am a ToDo group steering committee member. I partner heavily with FINOS, open source readiness, InnerSource Commons. I'm a member there. I work in a FinTech firm, so I deal with all this stuff. Look at this. This works at a bank, right? So, but it does, it's true, it does. But so that's a little bit about me. Huge, huge, huge community advocate, open source advocate, InnerSource advocate. And that's a little bit about who I am.
Brittany tells the truth, that's who she is. I'm Russ Rutledge. I'm the executive director of the InnerSource Commons Foundation. The InnerSource Commons is a nonprofit foundation dedicated to the education and spread of InnerSource in the industry. Brittany is an amazing member of the foundation. Priya's in the audience, participates in the InnerSource Commons. He gave a great talk on InnerSource earlier today. Yes, thanks Priya. All right, so you can tell these pictures aren't actually us. Well, maybe you can tell. So these are the characters from the movie Jaws. So Brittany gets to be the awesome sheriff who helps take the shark head on. That's Brody.
Yep.
And me, my picture, if you haven't seen the movie, this is Hooper, who is an oceanographer, more kind of the academic thinker type, kind of sitting back and seeing it through. But they both make together an awesome team to take on the Jaws shark in the movie. And this up here is an awesome team to take on regulatory concerns in the FinTech industry with InnerSource. So let's go to it.
And a fun fact about Brody is he is afraid of swimming. And just so you all know, I am here terrified of heights. So this has been a harrowing journey just being here.
Pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Mile high in Denver.
High,
oh, okay, I thought the podium
what's
was.
happening?
Okay, all right.
So when we're creating this talk, it's very near and dear to my heart, right? There's some elements of things here. So welcome to the waters, right? FinTech firms, especially now, are under consistent scrutiny. It's incredibly stressful, a stressful time for FinTech firms. We're honestly working with a lot of antiquated software. We have packages in our builds that we don't know where anything lives. It's just intense. And then the regulators are coming at us hard, right? They want to know what's in your applications, what's being delivered to your customers, how is your money being managed, how are all of these things happening? And we are at a scramble. How many people have to look at a spreadsheet once a week? Right, to figure out certain things. It's intense, right? And so, working with the development teams, being an open source strategist, we are just drowning in audits. We are just trying to piece together all of the different tools that are being used out there, because then you have this one team across the hallway that wants to buy in this one vendor-supported product, and then this other team already has it, but they're not talking to each other, and then they're both grabbing the same amount of data. And it just doesn't make any sense, right? Nobody is talking to each other, but the regulators are all talking to everybody else. We are getting things that we are identifying in-house. We are getting things that the government is finding outside of house. It's very, very, very stressful. So with that being said, when we hear compliance, we have to really think about it, right? So compliance, what do you first think about? You think, crap, stressful.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you take on compliance, really compliance initiatives, within and out, really apply to the company as a whole, and those issuing things that need to be complied with and regulations, really expect that the company is going to operate as one unit, like I think within and without the company. And just the fragmented nature of what Brittany talked about, all the different tools, I think are really difficult. And it's interesting because here, the last bullet point here, a lot of times the freedom for a development team to choose their own tooling is around the ability to innovate. And that's the last bullet point here. But what's difficult here is when there's different tooling, different methodologies being chosen across the organization, it's really difficult to meet our compliance targets on separate technology stacks. And what was thought to be an accelerant to help innovate can really be held back. A lot of the time that we thought we were going to save in innovation really goes toward figuring out how to set up unique ways to meet compliance and regulations on separate technology stacks.
Yeah, so this quote here is just very applicable. It's not the waters themselves that are dangerous. It's what lurking beneath the waters, the things we don't see, the things we don't know. Yeah. So here we are. It's time, little Jaws fun fact. This is Bruce the shark. If anybody's friends with Steven Spielberg, my name is Sigourney Weaver. You might have known me from Ghostbusters. So there you go. I don't want to get sued. So anyway, so this is Bruce. So meet the shark. So this is our regulatory pressure, right? These are the things that we're experiencing every single day. There's multiple different compliance demands, particularly for me. My firm is based solely in the United States, so I'm pretty okay with things that are happening. But I also know of other financial firms that are dealing with folks that are based out of Europe, right? So we have, DORA metrics that are in the EU, but now we have SEC findings and SEC regulations in the United States, so that's very confusing and it gets really, really stressful. We have cybersecurity disclosures that we need to make sure of that we're here, but like what's DORA doing out there? What are those applications that we're working with if you are stretching across at different firms, right? There are banks and there are particular facets that go across the world. What are they working with? What are their laws? How does this work? It's very, very tricky, and then, for example, in the United States, we have the software supply chain management system, so you have to deal with all of that here. What is mandated? How many companies in fintech firms right now can actually generate an SBOM flawlessly? Not that many that I have seen. It's very interesting to see what flawed data that we have out there and what's just being thrown against the wall. So it's really, really intense. And you have like all of these different interpretations, and a lot of this stuff is really new, and legal teams are still getting up to speed on all of that, but we just have to keep going, and we're just getting hit with all this new stuff. But the problem is nobody's talking to each other, right? Yeah.
And I'll just add in, Brittany, you're an expert in the fintech space and all the regulations that come, and that's the primary example we're using. But you might be in an industry that faces the same pressures. So I just want to call out and relate this. You can imagine in medical software industry, there are all kinds of requirements around HIPAA reporting and patient disclosure and data rights and sharing around patient information. And these are things that can change with differing regulations and laws that come out that can vary state by state or country by country. Another one I think is InnerSource in government. There can be requirements around the way that software development is done, disclosed, documented. So even though we've gone deep on fintech, I just want to call out that all of the strategies that we'll talk about here can apply to any industry where regulation and compliance is an ever-present feature in software development. Just like in the movie, the shark is the ever-present, although off camera, it's always in our mind, right? Yes. So that's our analogy here with the regulations always in mind.
Yeah, version control chaos, we have all of this version management madness. We're trying to figure out if you, hypothetically, I don't know who anybody's going through this exercise, but we still have people that are running like Python 3.8, but now all of a sudden it's end of life, end of service at the end of the year. You need to get on 3.12, but you need to build this image, and we don't know how to upgrade all these people. Oh my God, it's insane. And that's just one runtime. One. Don't even get me started on Java, Go, Node.js, and then you got to vet it, test it, do all these things, and you have all of these people that are scrambling, doing all of the things separately. And that's where we're falling into these issues. This is where we're falling into the madness. This is where licensing, my goodness. Remember when SBOMs, it was just about the license? Now look at it. It's exploded. It's crazy. So, don't even get me started on that. So, that's why we get into that delivery process. that
Go to the next
slow
slide.
silo delivery process, you know? And so this is where we're at. So yeah, so right now, how can we solve this? We went through, we talked about the shark, we talked about the regulations. Now it's time to build the boat. The boat is going out to sea to help get the regulators to help us understand what's happening. So we need to start an InnerSource program in fintech firms and or your regulated firms. So how are we gonna do that?
Yeah, 100%. So we'll go through here, getting started, kind of hearkening back to our movie. It's time to get in a boat and go out and take on this, shark of a regulation that's coming at us. InnerSource is the boat that can help us. We'll go through in the remainder of the presentation how InnerSource practices are naturally aligned to the audit, regulation, and compliance requirements in a regulated industry. First off, again, back to the movie, Brody didn't go alone. Hooper didn't go alone. The two of them actually didn't go alone. They went with Quint, who was a veteran seaman. Sorry?
He's my favorite.
Oh, Quint's your favorite?
I really identify with that character.
Yeah, Quint is pretty awesome. He's pretty tough.
Yeah.
But he's a tough, kind of lifelong shark hunter, if you see the movie. But I think the thing that's really interesting here is they each had their own angle that they were coming at it from. Like I said, my character Hooper was a real academic oceanographer. He had different strengths. And it's the same way with tackling regulation here in the organization. InnerSource is a boat that can carry multiple passengers inside it. So your natural allies in starting InnerSource to gain the benefits of InnerSource, and then also to help with regulations, is teams like the compliance team, the legal team, InfoSec team. There's all aspects of InnerSource that are beneficial to these teams as well. Now, you in running an InnerSource program, you might be running it for a different goal than these other folks. Maybe you're really interested in reducing duplication of work for engineering efficiency's sake. Maybe you want to increase innovation at your organization by getting more people together. You might feel that InnerSource, since it follows the open source way, is a better, more holistic way of working. These allies that you partner with may not be interested in any of those things. So when you partner and invite others in the organization to help you to establish InnerSource in your company, you can present it showing how InnerSource will benefit the things that they care about. Things like increased ability to meet compliance, increased confidence that solutions in the company match vetted tools that have been vetted by security. It's okay if those that you're partnering with have a different angle or a different purpose for InnerSource than you do, who may be coming at it with a developer point of view. Yep. But these are your natural contacts to get in the InnerSource boat, launch out from the proverbial dock together.
Yep, never forget your DevX people too. So your developers, your DevX folks are really, really important. So including them too, which is really, really great, right? Because everything that we're doing is staying inside of the company. Open source methodologies inside of the company behind the firewall. So we need to make sure that we're strategically partnering with everyone. And because if you're looking, we just named off a lot of different stakeholders and partners. Now, all of a sudden, they have visibility into the work that others are doing, which is going to mitigate all of that nonsense that's happening off into the side. So if you're going to need a bigger boat, got to build it with the allies. So.
All right. So let's head out to sea. Here, next scene in the movie, we get Quint, Hooper, and Brody going out to sea to take on the shark. And I love this picture here because the sea is broad, it's vast, and actually none of them that were on the boat exactly knew how they were going to take on this shark in the movie. And I think launching an InnerSource program or going to support InnerSource at your organization is a little the same. The sea that you see in front of you may appear very vast. You might say, I've never done this before. In the movie, none of these characters had done this before, but together we can do it. And the benefits that come are so worth it. So let's get into it. Come with us metaphorically. Let's head out to sea and see how InnerSource can help us in this environment.
So let's roll out the barrels, right? InnerSource and compliance, how does it work? What function, so the function of the barrel to the shark, right? The shark, when the barrel got hit, I don't know if this is triggering for anybody, apologies. It's a shark movie, it is what it is.
It is.
So essentially, when the first barrel hit Bruce, it helped him surface. Then you kind of knew where he was. Second barrel hit him. Okay, great. Third barrel, we'll get into that. But all of a sudden, just like InnerSource, just like the barrels, they help keep it close, they keep it visible, keeps it to the surface, and something that you can control. So let's learn about these particular barrels.
Can I just
Yeah, sure.
rephrase? Sorry, I'll let you do it.
No, go for it.
Rephrase the barrel in a way that makes sense to me in case it helps anyone as well.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so the way it'd be, they're tracking this shark in the movie, right? It's below the water, you can't see it. Sometimes it feels like these regulations could come up and get you anytime, right? So we need some visibility at where this shark in the movie is going, where it's located. So with these barrels, you know, they're empty, so they'll float on top of the water where they're visible to those that are in the boat. And they had a way of attaching them to the shark by a line. So even when the shark was like far underwater, perhaps swimming fast, you'd see this barrel on top of the water, so you can see the location. And as they added more and more barrels, it actually slowed the shark down, so they could circle it and have it under control. So that's at least the way it makes sense for me to think about this metaphor. So these are our barrels that help us keep tabs on regulation and compliance and help to slow it down so we can encircle it and manage it.
And each one of these tactics and methodologies that we're going to share with you today, and yeah, we probably are kind of kicking some time here. We are going to, all of these could be applicable to all different facets of your organization. So right now we're starting with visibility, right? One of the ways, the best ways to really help yourself and align yourself in your company, InnerSource, same principles of open source, but behind the company's firewall, shared searchable code bases. There are so many things. If you don't have personal identifiable information, if there's certain crown jewels and crown assets that are not at risk, I think that it's completely fine for them to be open, right? You should have searchable code bases. They should align into a project portal. If you're a new developer, new technician, however you're coming into your organization, you want to get started with Project A, you should be able to go to a place and find what exists that is open and able and stable to use. And we're going to talk about stability. Git-based history and searchability. You know, we are seeing a lot of movement and a lot of change, and it's happening very, very quickly. Now, all of a sudden, you have one person that was working on Project A, that person is now at company C. And then all of a sudden, all of your Git history, their Git history, and that's a huge core project that people rely on, it's abandoned. What are we going to do? Now, all of a sudden, that regulator is just coming at you. It's coming back, right? You know, we need to be able to have that auditing, that version tracking. We need to be able to see everything. And then transparency really supports external compliance reviews. And also, I would say from a level of transparency, it's really important because you're also supporting your young engineers. They're learning. Some folks, you know, you get deeply embedded in this project. Let's say hypothetically, you know, I'm never going to happen, but I've been working on the kernel for 30 years, and now I'm a new developer coming in, and I'm just all grizzled and hard. You know, it's tough. So it's just like being transparent, having that. It's really good to have for our young engineers.
Let me just speak to this just a little as well about how it relates to regulation. This is more than just visibility of code. I think it's visibility of process and project management as well. Without InnerSource, when on siloed individual development teams, it's very common, since the same people are spending time with each other all the time, to have a lot of context about how this project is run, to be tribal knowledge that's shared in the minds of those that are talking to each other, because they do so often. InnerSource really breaks that, because you could have contributors from across the company. It's not possible to run the project with this knowledge in the minds of folks. It has to be pushed into the documentation at a process level, at a project level. And so then not only visibility of code, but visibility of project and process assets, which lends itself to once you have the visibility, it lends itself to be able to be compliant in a way that's provable. So that's that like tight connection, the InnerSource forcing that visibility that also helps with regulation.
And then also the visibility also leans back into the reusability, right? The reusability component.
Oh, yeah, this one's me too.
Yeah.
Yep. So one of the principal benefits I think a lot of organizations want to get with InnerSource is wide reuse across the company without central projects becoming bottlenecks. This is great for engineering efficiency. And the whole idea here with InnerSource is that the time it takes to develop something that's centrally shareable is less time than it would take each consuming organization to develop similar functionality. In a highly regulated environment where compliance, regulation, and process, it adds overhead to each bit of code that's created and run at the organization. with that extra overhead and extra cost to develop code that meets compliance and regulatory requirements, the benefit to the organization of centralizing that cost and paying it once is even greater. So even greater payoff for the sharing in terms of just company throughput. Also, compliance and regulation folks love this because if there are central modules that have gone through the right process, we know they're compliant, we know they meet regulations, it's very quick for teams to adopt those, and any central compliance or regulatory team at the company can have confidence rather than having to audit the technology stack of 50 or 100 different solutions, knowing that there are central components that are kind of pre-set, pre-reviewed, pre-authorized that meet all the requirements, frees the consumers up to develop functionality that's unique and advances the business forward, and then also makes the job of that regulating team so much easier, just being able to see how many folks are using that component that's already been approved.
Yeah, and then chasing it down. Build it once, use it a bunch. More people contributing, it's fantastic. Build it once, use it a bunch. And then what if you have a very stable thing and you've been leveraging all of your open source dependencies and all your open source libraries, you could potentially push that back upstream. You know, if you have an open source contribution process in your organization, FinTech's it's a little trickier, but if you do, you could push that solution upstream. So you're not just using, you're contributing, right? So that's very important. So, you know, shared ownership. You know, this is what it's all leading into. Visibility, reusability. Now we're in shared ownership, right? Developers, compliance, DevX, InfoSec, and everybody can contribute together. You have your clear project portal. You have your clear Git history. You have your clear metrics of where everything is aligning. Now all these folks can actually go in and contribute together. Now DevX might be developing differently than somebody at InfoSec or your CISO team, but they're still there, right? And so they're understanding, they're able to leverage these tools, and you don't have to go back and forth to have meetings, to have another meeting. And that's something that I see quite a bit, and it's something that we do live with quite a bit. It's very, very, very challenging, and so you're just slowing down. And then you have all of these situations that are happening too, given like the current climate of all the things that we're going from, we're having a lot of smaller teams, which is, teams are getting smaller right now. And so a lot of things that are happening is things are getting chucked over the wall. And it's not my problem anymore. I did what I needed to do. I did point A. I did what I needed to do. It met my contract, facilitated the needs of my manager. I'm done now. And then they walk away. That's happening a lot. And so all of a sudden, your regulators are coming in. You're seeing risk time after time after time again. And it's getting more and more shaky ground. And so when you have shared ownership, you're going to get those response times. Going back to what Russ was mentioning, you know, where we're talking about using the project once, pushing all of these security patches out there, you know where everything lives and housed and what it all impacts, using it once, and it's also, you know, streamlining vulnerabilities. So it's really, really, really important.
Yeah, just, sorry, one thing on the previous slide. Sorry, I know I keep adding on.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I just want to really kind of tie it together and then of how InnerSource supports this specifically. InnerSource really breaks down walls. There's a natural wall that exists in a lot of organizations and in a lot of people's minds, which is what team owns the code. And there's this invisible wall that if you're not the team that owns the code, you're not going to contribute to it. So InnerSource is all about breaking down that wall and saying, oh, any human, any engineer, maybe you're not an engineer, anyone that can write some code can submit a contribution. So that's one wall that's broken down, which is on team or off team. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter. You're an engineer, you're a developer, you're submitting code to the company. That's one wall that's been broken down. And I think with regulation and compliance, there are other walls like you know, the engineering team does this and the compliance manager does this. But all of a sudden with InnerSource and the idea of meritocracy, you realize that a human can do this. And it might be the compliance manager that does it for the project, but we just have a project that needs stuff done. And so you see people, as we break down this idea of team versus not team, even within a team or effort, the different personas and roles that are involved that are traditionally, well, this person only does this part of the project and this person only does that. In the mind, that's broken down as well. So that's one way I think that InnerSource is connected to this breaking down of walls that helps accelerate compliance.
Agreed. Yeah,
Right.
that shared ownership, and then also you're building your own skill set up. You're learning more, So, yeah, so now we're going to talk about patterns, right? So this is some really interesting things on what, barrels 1 through 3, we've accomplished all of these particular things. We've shared this information. Well, just like InnerSource, everything's repeatable. So,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is where I get to lead, because this part is related to the nonprofit foundation that I said I'm a part of, the InnerSource Commons Foundation. So a lot of these patterns, they're not necessarily unique to one organization. Obviously, we're saying things that apply to FinTech. I've said it applies to other regulated organizations. And a lot of patterns about how to do InnerSource successfully apply across the software industry. So one of the principal kind of outputs or projects of the InnerSource Commons Foundation is an online book of InnerSource patterns, which are a generic kind of problem statement. If you're having this problem at your company, here's a type of program or effort that you can try. And there's a really neat format, the pattern format. We didn't invent it. It's used in other areas of the industry. But we're using it to create patterns around InnerSource. There's an online book. You'll find it very easily, InnerSource patterns. And you can browse there and look for particular problems or challenges that you're having at your organization, and then a pattern of how other companies have overcome that. So a few that are really interesting here, I think in the context of regulated industry, one we put at the top here, our core team pattern. There's a pattern that outlines when there's confusion between what the maintainers of an InnerSource project are responsible for versus the contributors. There's a clear listing of general roles and responsibilities that really helps to clarify. And companies, many organizations use this pattern and just point to it. So not every organization needs to specify what's expected of you as the owner of an InnerSource project or as a contributor. One more, and then I'll stop and pass it over back to you, Brittany. 30-day warranty is an excellent pattern where there's some trepidation or worry, and this can happen in a regulated environment, where a contribution from off-team, maybe despite our best efforts, there's lacking some context where the contribution has some negative effect, and there can be some worry at times from a team. Should I accept in a contribution? What if something goes wrong? The 30-day warranty pattern, subscribed to by many organizations, which basically says that for a 30-day period following exception and deployment of a contribution from off-team, the contributor is on the hook to get called in and help fix any issues that are found. And this is part of the contract with the contributing team, that all the teams of the organization can know that they're subscribing to. So in regulated environment, this is really helpful to make sure that as these central projects are there, if something does go wrong, there's agreed upon access to the person that's familiar with the recent change that was made to help work on the fix.
Yeah, that's really important because, yes, sometimes things break, and people are doing this thing called vibe coding, and so that gets a little tricky, right? So, finally, we're at the end here of all these particular facets, right? So we're at barrel 5, cultural alignment, right? So, we want to encourage openness, trust, and knowledge sharing. That's going to build the confidence. That's going to build up your projects. You're going to fully get a deeper understanding across your entire spectrum, leveraging these InnerSource practices. When we're doing all of these things, we talked about all the version management. We talked about license compliance. We talked about all of these things. When you put them at the forefront of your development process, it's consistently being thought about. If you're holding each team member accountable for their role in the compliance and compliance-based development, you're getting a proactive space ready to go. We have been so used to just being activated and just like active, and we just reacting and all of these things to all of these different. If we were fully prepared and fully understanding all together, we wouldn't have this mad dash hypothetically to the end of the year to upgrade everything to Python 3.12, right? So that's that level of proactivity. That's where we need to get to. And that's really important because when you're working across the culture and you're building that trust in your organization, that's where you're getting folks to really get on board. And then also too, if you are new or you are not quite familiar with the project, you can get really intimidating. And there's a psychological aspect to our development that we do have to deal with all of the time. And we want to feel safe in the space in which we work. We want to feel psychologically safe and sound with the projects that we engage with. We want to feel safe with our other teams that we're partnering with consistently. And that's where InnerSource and that cultural alignment really does hit home, and it really does help. And then it's also just really good and important into the what?
Yeah, I'll take the last bullet there. I think InnerSource really, one of the best ways I like to sum it up is it really changes the mindset, like who's my team that I work with at the company. It's not just the Scrum team I'm on, but my team is the whole company, and I'm on team with the whole company. We're all in this together. This shark of a regulation that's coming after us is something that's big, and it's silly for us all to go against it alone. When we're all together, we're stronger, and we can take it forward.
Yeah, and so, speaking of accountability, we are all accountable. So there are communities out there that help this. We are here for you. And so I'm going to have Russ talk about InnerSource Commons a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about FINOS. And even though FINOS is financial regulation, it still applies.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten to talk about InnerSource Commons quite a bit already. We've talked about the...
Well, invite people. How can people get involved?
That's a good message to send. I'll say a little more about it, too.
Okay, there you go.
I had something to say. I was just...
We got about 7 minutes.
Oh, this will be 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, well,
No
you
problem.
2 or 3, me 2 or 3.
The InnerSource Commons Foundation, besides the patterns book that I talked about, has an online Slack that you can join. You can find all this very easy on our website at innersourcecommons.org. And thank you, Brittany. I do invite everyone to come and find us at innersourcecommons.org. There's a Slack instance going 24 hours where you can discuss questions that you have about InnerSource with other practitioners. And then the InnerSource Commons hosts a set of open source projects that are designed to be the central, neutral knowledge hub for InnerSource in the industry. So we have I think 2 or 3, but 3 books that are actively worked on in the InnerSource Commons, and they're all hosted in GitHub. Anyone can add text to the books through pull request. We run an annual InnerSource Summit once a year. It's happening November 13th this year. You can find information on our website about that. If you're a practitioner, the CFP is still open till July 15th.
I'm filing.
Yeah. And so that's happening this November. We also run a series of online events once a month. There are community calls with a speaker talking about some topic about InnerSource. So it's the place to be if you want to stay in touch with what's happening with InnerSource in the industry. I'm there all the time. I'd love to see you there. Yeah,
and fun fact about InnerSource Commons, it was my first community that I joined. And I will say it's one of the more welcoming communities that I've ever been involved in.
Yep.
So thank you.
Mine too.
Yep, nice job. You're creating a safe space there. And so then I am in FINOS, right? So FinTech, financial open source. So I'm in the open source readiness SIG. We talk a lot about InnerSource. We're doing a lot of compliance scaffolding, AI governance scaffolding. And a lot of the patterns that we're developing in FINOS is going to be applicable to InnerSource Commons. So this is why you're hearing it today. In FINOS, we used to have an InnerSource sub special interest group. We have decided that we are going to merge the two together. So we're actually going to take the FINOS SIG itself, and we're going to actually partner deeply more with InnerSource Commons. Why are we're doing it, we weren't doing it right. We're repeating the same projects in different spaces. It didn't make sense. So coming this fall, you're going to see more FinTech folks in InnerSource Commons, which is going to be really, really exciting. So yeah.
It will be. InnerSource Commons was started by a FinTech organization.
That's amazing. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Sure
Yeah,
was.
yeah, PayPal.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago now.
Yeah. So that's really exciting. So that's coming very, very soon. One-stop shop. There's your space. You can find us there. And then, but for open source readiness and all of the other great stuff that we're doing in FINOS from a regulated standpoint, you can find us over there too. Very welcoming community as well. And so really the key takeaways, InnerSource is not anti-regulation. It's resilience, right? InnerSource helps you get compliant. It helps you with the visibility. It's just there. Each InnerSource practice, one more barrel in the shark, right? And then, of course, one of our favorites.
Yeah, compliance and security is stronger when we collaborate. We basically centralize the overhead of of compliance and security with InnerSource, which leaves all using these central InnerSource projects with more time to innovate on what's going to move the business forward instead of innovating on how to get better at meeting compliance. That's not something we want every team in the organization to be a part of. So this is something that Brittany and I both feel very passionate about because we were very involved, FINOS, InnerSource Commons. We hope it's a journey that you want to be a part of, and that here at Open Source Summit or afterwards in these communities, that we can take this journey together.
Yeah, and so with that, we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. I think we do have a couple of minutes for a couple of questions, because I think, I don't know, what time do we wrap, 3:45?
We do, yeah, if we have 5 minutes.
Nice job.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't take too long.
No, we did great.
Yep.
Yes, we did timing great. Yeah, yeah. So does anybody have any questions about anything? Yeah, go for it. Oh, we got to do a microphone. Here, wait, I have one.
Do we repeat the question?
Wait, they have this one. Can you turn this guy on? And I'll repeat the question, too. There you go, dear.
Yes. So you mentioned the benefit of having like a database or something that's searchable. And I found in the past, like even like on some of the like repository platforms, that it wasn't enough to just like allow access to search in like the normal like GitHub, GitLab, whatever it is.
Yes.
Because the names aren't descriptive enough, and it's hard to really like discern what the project is to figure out if I can reuse it. So do you have any recommendations on, if not tools, but at least like what features to look for and how to set it up so that it's like not just discoverable, but like understandable?
That's a great point, because in regulated industries, a lot of our stuff is like named with asset codes. And so you can't really tell, like, oh, this is a reusable microservice or anything like that. It's just like B914-K. You're like, well, that's not helpful at all. So I recommend with your source code manager, depending on what it is, the labeling system is great. Very simple, like what we do for GitHub, right? To throw an InnerSource label on there, work and try to develop, I think we should come up with an open source/InnerSource project on a reusable InnerSource portal, so that your projects can live in there. SAP has one.
Yep. Yeah.
But labeling's the best start. I don't know about, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll add on. First, let me generalize and say, even outside a regulated industry, this is one of the first things to do when starting InnerSource at your organization. The source code being open isn't enough, as you say. Folks can't find it. So almost invariably, the first thing that's going to happen as a company is you're going to create some kind of listing of InnerSource projects at the company. And almost invariably also, you create some self-service way for projects to opt in to be a part of the listing. A common way I've seen is a tag in GitHub, and as Brittany mentioned, there's an open source project that some in the InnerSource Commons use, a project portal for InnerSource that can run off of GitHub tags. It came from SAP, and then later another organization like created something that added to the back end. So we're like doing an open source project around enabling InnerSource. The other thing that we see a lot used is the Backstage internal developer portal. There's a lot of organizations in the InnerSource Commons that are using that for the listing. But almost invariably, again, if you're starting InnerSource, first thing to do, create a place to list out InnerSource projects. I've done it on a Confluence page before. That can also be self-serve. So I'm going to just edit the page. And then your first metric for success of your program is number of projects that opt in to be listed as InnerSource.
Yeah, and then always, of course, too, when you're starting your InnerSource journey, have very clear guides on what isn't InnerSource, what does a proper documentation look like, all of those things. And I think it's really important, and this goes back to the strength and importance of open source program offices or InnerSource program offices. These folks could be subject matter expert champions inside of your organization that can guide your teams to success. They could actually work like a nice consultation service to show this is what your repo should look like. This is how you accept contributions, because many of these teams, as I mentioned within FinTechs, they're like dinosaur times. Sometimes it's tricky. I mean, who has worked at a FinTech? I'm just being really honest. It's dinosaur times out there. It's intense. So you need to actually help and nurture and guide these folks on how to do it right? So that's another piece of advice there. Yeah.
Right. Well, I have one more.
Sure.
Are you seeing a rise in like, I guess it would be like ISPOs instead of OSPOs?
I'm going to let you take that one.
Yeah, sure. I think ISPOs like OSPOs have been on the decline in the last year. I don't think that's news to anyone here. So I'd say about a year to year and a half ago, we're seeing a rise of like an OSPO and an ISPO. I haven't heard of a lot of new ISPOs. There are some. The most common thing is it's like consolidating with the OSPO, which from what I hear, a lot of places like the OSPO is unfortunately shrinking a little bit in the current climate.
I know, we gotta talk about something positive.
Sorry, so this is the last question. But they don't have to be together. And some places have an ISPO, but no OSPO at all. It depends on the goals of the organization.
Yeah.
So it can exist in all configurations.
That's actually a good point. I mean, depending on the nature of your firm and depending on what you do, you might not any positive chance that you're gonna push anything upstream. So just start pushing for an ISPO inside of your house first, right?
Yep.
Cool. And I got time. No, it's 3:45. Yeah. I don't know if anybody's coming in behind us, but oh, well, that's fine. Thank you.
You
You guys were great. Great.